Hi, everybody. This is Wayne Martin. I'm one of the founders of Relationship Nation, and today we're going to talk to Joshua Johnson, who's running for Reading City Council. So, Joshua, tell us a little bit about you and why you're running for City Council.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Wayne. I really appreciate it. A little bit about me is I'm a builder, developer, and been building and developing in Reading in the last 10 years, trying to build projects that kind of have a little bit of a different look and feel than some of our typical housing projects.
Right.
Example of that is some of the three-story buildings across from Woody's off of Oregon Street. And also a subdivision that's more front porch oriented, which is really different.
Community,
Develop
the community.
Yeah, and some of that, there's a lot of story behind that inspired those types of projects.
Sure.
But before that, I was in technology. I was helping tech startups launch their apps and do different things like that for the first part.
Websites. I was looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah, and after doing that for the first part of my career and building technology and apps for large companies like Procter & Gamble and Walmart and music artists and also tech startups.
You did one for Shakira?
Yes, yeah, we did a project for Shakira. That was really fun. But it was after a year, these apps are obsolete.
Oh, wow.
And I started to realize that my kids will never be able to see some of the hard efforts that I'm putting into building great things and actually building physical things like buildings and housing projects or commercial projects. I'll be able to take my kids and grandkids to. So a little bit selfish, but also to feel like you're making an imprint on your city that matters.
Well, what's interesting to me, looking at your bio, so you have a BA from
Oral Roberts University.
Oral Roberts University, and your background, your family was in the construction,
right.
Which so kind of gives you a background. My family comes from
I told my dad I would
too.
Never do it. And
so
here
did
I am.
I hate this digging ditches and
Right.
pounding nails, but what's interesting is your path is similar to my path. I went into construction development, and you went into that, and it's just kind of interesting. When you do a project, you see the impact that it has on the community. And that's why I'm really excited about talking to you running for city council, because I think it gives you a little different view than the average councilman. Mm-hmm. And so tell us a little bit about that, why that's important.
Well, I think that's a great segue into why I'm running. With the kind of projects I'm doing, my dad was in the trades, so he's a subcontractor or did a lot of HVAC for residential houses and things like that. But what I got into is I wanted to kind of master plan projects. I wanted to design and build, and I wanted to do ground up, which is it absolutely throws you into the thrusts of government collaboration.
Absolutely.
You have to work with the permit center. You have to do planning. You have to do entitlements, which is, the word for getting your project that the idea of your project would be approved before you can even go vertical, which is the buildings we all see.
Right.
So all the underground work, everything like that. So having to go through those processes over and over again, as you understand from your work, is the red tape that most just general contractors don't want to deal with.
Right. And one of the things in my experience, because I did a lot of development down in the Monterey Peninsula, and so getting everybody on board in the community and then the government agencies, it's a real tightrope that you're walking, because you want to create fantastic projects. I love your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. But you also have to walk the line with your community, special interests, your neighborhood, all that. And then at the same time, one of the things that I really like about you is you're thinking forward. Mm-hmm. How's that going to impact the future?
Right.
Yeah, because you know what? It's going to be standing there for hopefully 100 years or more.
Absolutely.
And the design and the impact it has just on the street, surface, walkways, how people interact. I love the idea about front porches. It's very, very cool. Bringing it back.
Well, and I think the way it translates to city council, I think the best is the creative problem solving that you have to do to get a project to work. you've got a lot of state regulations, local
Right.
regulations, you have zoning, and your initial idea is not always going to be the one you're going to get. And I kind of
Right.
have now lived by a principle that if I can get 70% of what I want, then I'm doing very, very good.
Right.
And so you kind of fight for that 70%, and you're trying to get a project to work and pencil out, basically make it financially feasible.
Right.
And that's the same thing I think government and our elected officials need to do when it comes to the challenges they face with budgets, the challenges they face with community service projects that the community desperately wants.
Right.
But we have, where's the funding going to come from for that? And I think having an outside voice that actually has to deal with those challenges. Money is not endless.
Right.
You look at the world differently. The filter is different. And I think that's what I would like to bring is it's not a no. It's is there another way?
Right.
And I want to bring that fresh perspective.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the city? I know we have, troubles with our budgets, and we have a lot of different issues. But in your view, what is the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge today is that everyone's feeling a pinch economically. The way that has a downstream effect on your local government is when we don't spend, your local government doesn't get as much sales tax revenue.
Right.
So sales tax revenue is down. TOT is down a little bit.
So TOT for the lay people out there.
Transit occupancy tax. That's the portion of tax that you get charged when you stay at a hotel or Airbnb or Vrbo, something like that. Your local government receives funding for those types of things. That helps cover typically the promotion of your area. It goes to various projects that could help, infuse, different things that benefit our area. So, for instance, projects that might bring out-of-town people for tournaments, like at the sports
Sure.
park, or our Visit Reading is a good example of where we
Right.
spend some of our TOT money, which promotes the entire area. So that's how that benefits. But also, the biggest impact, Wayne, has been the inflationary cost increases. So the city has to budget 10 years in advance per council policy.
Okay.
So we budgeted 10 years in advance, and inflation has taken a huge, hockey stick upward on materials and labor,
Right.
on all our public works projects. So just imagine your roads projects, any project that involves our electric utility, any project involving our sewer and water treatment, everything that kind of hits ratepayers. All those projects are now, a lot more expensive.
Right.
Those bids are coming in higher. Even if they're grant funded and we got awarded the grant and it was based on a budget from 2021 and we finally get awarded in 2023, guess what? Those costs are now higher.
You're fighting inflation.
And what are we doing in order to get those projects done, which help ratepayers? We're going into general fund, pulling from various other sources. We're trying to figure things out. So that's the challenge we have. So I think that's one of our biggest challenges. I actually think the challenge of homelessness, if we want to talk about that we
Sure.
see on our streets, which is, you talk to different people. We have about 500 to 600 homeless, unsheltered living on our streets.
Okay.
Because when you talk about homeless, you have to talk about sheltered and unsheltered. There are people living in emergency
Right.
shelters, and then we have those that are on our streets. Prop 1 funding is going to make whoever's in office look really good.
Okay.
So whoever's in office is going to look like a hero.
Okay.
But it was because people of California voted for mental health funding.
Oh, good.
And that's going to take care of the type of supportive housing and case management housing for those who have untreated mental health. They're living on our streets. They're actually going to get the treatment and support and care that they need through the Prop 1 funding that the state of California is providing. It's going to make our local city and police look awesome, but
Right.
really what it's going to do is probably take about 30% of some of
that
those
group
individuals off the streets in one fell swoop. I mean, over a period of a
Right,
few
sure.
years, but it's
Yeah.
going to feel very quick.
Right.
So I'm actually very encouraged by what that looks like over the next 5 years. I think the real question, the real concern that I have is, if this economy continues to be in a holding pattern, or we don't see some correction or some infusion in the right direction, then
Are we talking local economy, or are we talking national or regional?
all of it.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we're mostly driven by construction in our town.
Right.
Right. So if the construction guys are making money, then they're spending money at the
Right.
local restaurants. They're spending money at the local restaurants. Those people are spending more money at the grocery stores and other retailers. Right.
Right.
So that's
So let me ask you a little question because besides Relationship Nation, which we do as kind of a project for everybody, we need to talk and really develop our relationships with our community and people. But we also have Real Estate One, which is our brokerage. And so I'm involved looking at all the growth that is happening. And so I'm also concerned about housing, tentative maps that are sunsetting, that they're not going to be renewed. And so that puts a real crunch on the ability to develop property for housing.
right.
So here we have the industrial park, I guess. A little bit of background on that. I guess there's leases happen. There's going to be industry coming in that's going to have some pretty good paying jobs. You have the casino that may be coming in. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Sure.
Dignity Health is breaking ground as of today.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Isn't that pretty exciting?
Yeah, that's awesome.
You have the Wintu Indian tribe. They're going to build a $190 million hospital. That's going to be where their casino is, I believe. The existing one, right?
Great. Yep.
And then you have Bethel increasing 1,500 students. And so I see this massive amount of work coming to town. And there's other projects that we don't even know about that are happening. Where's all the housing going to come from?
Right. And it's a problem. I'm actually, being a licensed realtor myself, and being a builder, the problem is that the policies today are only encouraging and helping buyers and not helping builders.
Right.
And when you say it's like, why do we need to help the builders? We need to help the buyers. Well, here's the downstream effect of if you add more buyers to the market and you don't have enough housing, you're only increasing the cost to the buyer. So if you can add to the supply of housing, then it's going to stabilize the cost of housing overall. So that's what we need to do is we need to use the levers in local government that can help stabilize or reduce the cost of building so that we build more houses.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. In my first 90 days, I have a few projects that right off the bat that I know and we're already working on. I've already made motions since I'm currently an appointed council member.
Right.
I've already been able to move some things forward that I think is going to have a huge impact.
Which is kind of neat that you were appointed because you can see really kind of how everything's working. You're not just coming from the outside.
Right.
And being on the private enterprise side, directly working closely to get your projects done and understanding how everything works and ties together.
Right.
I think that's pretty interesting, and it makes you highly qualified to be in that position.
Yeah, it's helped. It's helped me know what is possible, so that the ideas that I bring forward, I'm big on getting a lot of research, so that when I bring forward an idea, especially publicly, I've done a lot of research and a lot of work with staff, outside of staff, in our community to see what actually makes sense to bring forward as a solution. So one of those ideas that I think will have a huge impact on the cost of housing is updating our fire code and some of our other local codes that go above and beyond the state code. That's been in progress for a long time, but raising the priority of that is going to have a huge impact on our industrial, our commercial, and our residential housing. Some of those reasons and it's that those additional codes were added are no longer relevant.
Right.
And so we still are going to be extremely fire resilient as a community because we need that. But there are things that are a huge impediment to the cost of construction and have an impact on your overall budget, which will slow down building of housing. And the other one is going to be solar farm, a community solar farm with REU. I've been working for 4 years to try and get the city of Reading exempt from needing solar on new construction.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't need it. The
Yeah.
whole point of it is to reduce the cost of the buyer in Reading. It actually increases the cost of your house
Right.
and increases the cost to you as a buyer. And you think that it's helping you, but really we're not out in the county with other providers. We
Right.
own our own utility and have some of the lowest costs in the state of California.
Right.
So I've been trying, but the Energy Commission will not exempt us. But what we could do is offer a subscription model to his community solar farm, which could have the potential of lowering the cost to builders by about $10,000 to $12,000 per house, because they can subscribe to this solar farm, which helps overall ratepayers. That brings down the cost overall to everybody.
Wow. Wow. So you're a real problem solver. I like that.
Yeah, and I would say that what I love is having relationships with even the RAU directors. And being on other boards with some of those directors, and I've had relationship. We have a lot of water cooler conversations about how to solve these problems, and they lead to real solutions. So I'd say it's in collaboration. It's not just me.
Sure.
It's in collaboration with really smart people. But when you have council members that can ask good questions, it can lead to something, and that's what we need.
Right. And you need that time. You need the input and buy-in by everybody. I in my former development background, I mean, we had to start early working with everybody. Otherwise, you just couldn't get your projects done. I mean, it was brutal at times.
Right.
But you have to work with, I call them the cave people, citizens against virtually everything. You got the NIMBYs, which are not in my backyard. You have the city, you have environmentalists, you have all this stuff, and you need to be able to work with everybody together to really make it work.
Right.
Otherwise, everybody in the city fails. It isn't just the developer. It's when you have a good project that really helps the city economically and in so many ways.
Yeah, we have to be
Right.
able to work with people that we don't always agree with 100%. We have to get away from the dualistic thinking and the all or nothing mentality.
Right.
We've got to get back to the table and figure out, hey, what are your concerns? How can we work around them? And what are my concerns? How we work with them? And whether that's a lease negotiation or that's a development agreement or that's figuring out what are the right rates and fees to charge or whatever it is, we have to come to the table. Politics has to get away from the personal attacks and back to
Right.
let's discuss the issues.
Right.
Let's get to the nitty gritty details and bring facts to the table and discuss them.
Real facts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which, since we're talking about this, so what are your thoughts on the rodeo grounds?
Yeah.
That's a real hot potato for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Absolutely. I'll share what I'm sharing publicly and have is I made the motion to start this conversation to build a committee to get this lease done. Some people have said, well, why would you create a committee? Why not just vote on the lease to be accepted? And the way that I describe it is if my best friend, who was the best man in my wedding, came to the city of Reading and said, I want to do a long-term lease for 50 years or 25 years, and I want you to sign it. You just trust me. Just trust, it's good. Just trust me. I would still say, hey, buddy, I need to read it, and let's talk about it. I want you to win.
Right.
You're my best friend.
Right.
But I represent the city of Reading, and I want to make sure it's inclusive of all the things that could benefit you and benefit the wider community.
Right.
So we don't need to belabor this, but let's get to the table and let's talk about it. I think that's good policy. So whether or not, and then I want to show people that special interest groups are valuable in our community, but they also shouldn't blind us to good policy.
Right.
Right. So just because we're supporting something should mean that we still operate as good fiscal policymakers, good relational policymakers, and we're setting a precedent for future deal making. Right.
Right.
So I want that to be something that a standard. I want people to know, how is Josh going to respond to this? Well, he responded like this. Just know that I'm probably going to stay true to those things. That's my goal. I want us to do this whether or not it's the rodeo or any. And I think we're going to come up with a really great deal that's great for the community and for the rodeo. Those conversations, what I can say is that they're going very positively. We have another meeting today. That'll be our second deep dive. And we're talking 3 hours of great discussion. And we're coming out saying, man, we're really accomplishing this in a quicker manner than we expected. We do need the state of California to also send us their letter of approval, so we know that we feel from a liability standpoint with HCD that we're in the clear, and we're going to get that. I think that'll probably come in the next 30 days, which is very, very exciting for our community.
Well, that whole area down there is such an important, piece of public property that whatever happens down there really needs to serve the whole community and not just special interests. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Civic, what the future is there. The cost to run the Civic is, pretty extensive. And if it's not used well, then it also can create a deficit with the city, as I understand it.
Well, and I think what the discussions where it's going is we are building this lease in a way that's going to encourage both a great partnership with the city and the rodeo to have more events down there. That is the whole point of why they're asking for a long-term lease, which is exciting to us. I've made calls to other council members in other cities who have a great partnership with their rodeo, had long, extensive phone calls and learning about how that, and honestly, the way they structure their relationship with the Rodeo Association locally there is very similar to the way we are. And what we want to do is just figure out a way to see those grounds used more for the community into the future, and even make our rodeo one of the best in the nation.
Right.
I think that not only are we a rodeo town, but we have the potential to be a really great rodeo town. And so that would involve more outdoor events that can be in partnership, possibly with the Civic. But those are conversations that are kind of outside the city purview. Those are two separate leasehold interests that we would hope to build some collaboration, but they actually are already in relationship with each other. So they're working. There's I think great hope for that to come in the future. Yeah.
So let's move into your position with the tribe and the new casino potentially on I-5. What's going on there? What are your views?
Well, so I can only look at it from the city of Reading, as a resident and appointed official right now. They are a sovereign nation. I do believe they can do whatever they want to do on their land. But as it relates to the city of Reading and impacts the city of Reading, those are the things that I'm concerned about. So what does that mean? I don't, because they're a sovereign nation, they don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to pay TOT. They don't have to pay sales tax. And because of those things, I don't want to do a deal that negatively impacts our businesses, that props up another country, right? Basically another sovereign nation at the expense of our businesses. So what I want to make sure is that those impacts are being considered. I'm going to treat them the same I would treat anybody else. When you look at a development project, how is it impacting our traffic, our sewer, our water, our electric grid? And it's not just the fair share of rates, because that's one thing, and they've been a customer down off of 273, and that's been a great agreement.
Sure.
And I think that the partnership there has been fantastic. I think with any new project, doesn't matter what it is, there has to be an analysis on those impacts, and there needs to be agreement from both agencies on those impacts, and I think that's what we have to get to.
So some of the concerns that I've heard are, how about health and safety? Police, or are we involved in that as a city of Reading, or? So how does that work?
It's so premature that I would say that it's all, we haven't even seen the fullness of what this project is going to be. I have not looked through a detailed construction document of where everything's going to go and how many square foot it's adjusted and evolved over time. So I don't think that it's known yet what is needed, what the gap is, what exactly is being asked the city of Reading. So I think there's a lot of conversations, and it seems pretty premature to dive too deep until more info is given.
Okay. Yeah. So what about the airport?
Oh, I love the airport. Such a huge economic driver for our community. Very excited to hear of the announcement about United Airlines' intent to bring a Reading to Denver connection.
That would be huge.
It would be huge.
Big connector.
We still have to raise some revenue guarantee money, just
Okay.
so everyone knows. So United has slotted us in, and there's been a mutual desire for this connection, but we have to bring a revenue guarantee of $2 million, and we don't have all that $2 million yet.
Right.
So there's some work to do, but I think we can do it. I think as a community we can do it. We've done it before with the LA connection, and so I know and trust that Steve Bade and the EDC, they're working very hard. They're flying to airline conferences and doing like speed dating for cities and airlines, and they're actually looking not just at that flight, but actually other flights to come to Reading. So be on the lookout for some more announcements in the next 6 months. I think we're going to be very pleased with the work that's being done. We're going to have the runway project done this next spring.
So what is the runway project?
Well, it's a FAA funded project. We have to keep our runways at from what I understand, they have to be at certain standards, and they have to be maintained and repaired. And this is kind of a long-awaited project that is it's finally getting its funding, and so we'll have to shut down for about a month to get it done. And then once that's done, it really helps us into many decades into the future. So we're excited. I mean, of course, there's talks. There's a new master plan for the airport properties that are being done right now.
Wow,
that's going to come out. So I'd look out for information on that. What is that going to do? Well, that might help someone look at private property in and around the airport, or even on the airport, and we might be able to do RFPs for a hotel in the future, or other types of hangar or light industrial operations that could kind of go in conjunction with what's happening on Venture Parkway with the Stillwater Business Park, which is a great connection and close proximity to our airport. So we just want to we wanted to make sure that our planning and zoning is adequate for that kind of development, which is very similar to what we're trying to do on the riverfront. Which
yeah. Which is, let's go to that question.
Sure.
So there's a lot of concern by residents of Park Marina, the Koutras family, and they control pretty much most of that from the newer buildings. I call them newer. They look really good versus what is there. And what's the city's view? What's your view of? I look at that because I actually live down in that area, and what an amazing piece of property that could be developed. I have some questions of whether it will ever be really commercially viable, but definitely as a residential area, it would be phenomenal. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
how do you work with them?
Well, so I have a private resident business owner thought, and I have a city of Reading thought.
Okay.
Right. So within the city of Reading, and as an elected official, what we want to do is make sure that we can make government, we could remove any friction that government would have in the process of developing that property if it were ever to be so.
Sure.
So why are we doing a riverfront specific plan? Well, it's to do just that.
Right.
Eliminate the environmental impact report that would be needed if someone came in.
That would be huge.
Yeah. So we're talking saving years on a project's lifespan to get a project off the ground. We're going to zone it for what the community wants, so that there's so that the community feels bought into the process. So there's been tons of workshops, lots of surveys, lots of response. It's been great from multiple special interest groups and just regular everyday residents, right, like yourself.
Sure.
And I think that that's been really critical. So when this specific plan is done, it's going to also have some micro master planning involved. So we're getting a little both and. But it's just that. It's a zoning document that could help save time for a developer, but the city's not going to develop it.
Right.
What the city is going to do, though, is we applied for a grant and got a Park Marina Roads grant.
Right.
So that's all going to get redone. So we can do infrastructure
Sure.
on the city property. But really what we can do to help a private property owner is update the zoning. So we did our general plan update this last year, which was a 3-4 year process. And then the specific plan overlays on top of that.
Okay.
And it says, hey, we got a general plan, but this specific plan kind of zooms in like your camera would and says, this is what we care about as a community along this. So if it were to ever be developed, if they follow that specific plan, they can go to permit.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
That is huge. You know what that means.
Yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah. So just follow the plan. If you have to change the plan, then you got to do an amendment. You got to go through Planning Commission again and do all that kind of stuff.
Do all the environmentals.
But we want to try and eliminate as much of that as possible. That's just removing the friction in government. And so now my private citizen lens and hat goes, it's up to the property owner, the private property owner now, to decide what to do with that.
Right.
If you don't like what's happening down there, make them an offer you can't refuse.
Right.
It's private property rights at that point. But
Absolutely.
we're trying to make it easier to see that move forward as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many things that are great possibilities for Redding. Growing up here, from being a kid, my family's kind of third generation in this area. And you just see the possibilities, and it's eking along. I would say probably in the last 15 years, we've really seen some progress of great architecture, making the community more inclusive as far as, biking and the parks and Turtle Bay and all that. And,
Yes.
We're all hoping to get great restaurants on the river.
I think that there's a future where we're going to keep seeing cities like Redding thrive, and it doesn't mean that we have to ever become like a huge metropolis to do it.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want that. That's why we all live here.
Yeah.
But there's going to be these micro, small cities that are going to have rural and small urban elements that tie together really well, that make for a pretty vibrant community, and we don't ever need to get to 300,000-400,000 people to do it.
No.
And that's what I think we're striving for. I think most people want the same things.
Right.
Because the very same people that want the rural and I want elbow room and all that kind of stuff also are like, I want good restaurants.
Right. Definitely.
And so we live in the tension of that world.
Yes.
So it's just as we pursue those things and ideas come forward, it's working themselves out. And I don't think that we have to become enemies to find the solutions. I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate.
Absolutely. We just need to, I believe we just need to learn how to communicate better,
Yeah.
because it's all about relationship.
Yeah. Well, it's the personal attacks take us into caveman mindset.
Right.
When we keep it on the issue and we keep diving in, we actually can make bad ideas good ideas
Right.
together.
Through collaboration.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
But we have to stop believing that we have it all answered, that we've got the answers.
Definitely.
Because there's this community is rich with diverse mindsets. And
Yes.
when I say, people say, well, we may not be diverse racially.
Right.
Right. And I moved
Yeah.
here from, it's like, I'm like, wow, we're definitely like a lot of white people. But we are diverse in our culture. I found that we're diverse in our background. So many people have moved here from
Right.
other places over the years, over the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
And diverse in our skill sets and different things. So all those things, like, I love how engaged we are in Redding, because I think it is going to produce better projects in the end.
Right.
What I hope is that we can stay friends while doing it.
Yeah.
I hope is that we can tie together, as a community like we did after the car fire.
Sure.
But we can do that not just in crisis, but also in opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I personally always think, you want to start out with respect and build trust and safety, and then communication can evolve from there.
Right.
That's pretty much a primary need. People want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be understood,
Right.
and they want to be valued. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily agree, but you can value their point of view and conversation, because it might change yours, modify yours.
For sure.
And really bring something beautiful to the table for City Redding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for showing up.
I
Is there
appreciate it.
anything you would like to say besides vote? When is the vote?
The vote's November 5th. Most people are going to get their ballots in October. Please, please vote. I do think that it's a very important election for our community right now. I think that we have an opportunity to move a lot of things forward, and what we need are leadership. We need leadership in a time when budgets are tighter to think outside the box, but also inside the box at the same time. And that's what I'll bring. I hope to serve the next 4 years as your council member, and keep working with you, Wayne, on making our city awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. So for all of you out there, if you have not registered, you can go to actually registertovote.ca.gov. So get involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's a
sir.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.